Okay, let's talk about this. So, how are you feeling today? Sad? Disappointed? Hopeless? Well, I think that a lot of people, including myself, actually didn't expect Bitcoin would ever drop below 30K again. But we have to face the fact that it did. Granted, it bounced back, but it did briefly drop below 30K. And I think that we have to be brave and face the fact that we are in a downtrend, okay? So I don't want to get into a debate about whether or not we're in a new bear market or we're still in the old bull market, or is this a bear market versus bull market? Yeah, I don't want to get into that debate. I think that a lot of that just depends on your time frame, right? So if you start buying Bitcoin back in 2020 or even before that, then you're probably still up overall. But if you bought it in the last 6 months or so, then unfortunately you probably would be at least slightly down. To all those people that are screaming doom and gloom, they probably are the ones that got into the market within the last 6 months. So it certainly does seem like a new bear market if you're down like 50%, if you were one of the unfortunate people that bought back in like March or April when the Bitcoin, or when the crypto market in general was at its peak, right? So it just depends on your time frame and depends on your focus on how long term you are. But today I thought I'd just give you a brief rundown of both the good and the bad news surrounding the crypto market. And I'm going to really try and be as least biased as possible, as unbiased as possible, because I do want you guys to make your own financial decisions, right? I'm not a financial advisor and I don't give financial advice, and I really do want you to come up with your own opinions as well. So I'm going to just report the news and try to provide my opinion as well. Obviously, my opinion is going to be at least slightly biased, but I'm going to try and argue and see from both sides. At the end, you can decide for yourself whether or not your crypto portfolio is still worth holding or if you should just panic sell everything now. Okay, so first bit of news that I want to address is a lot of people have been asking me what is the reason that the crypto market or Bitcoin is dropping, right? So first you got to realize that the crypto market is really volatile and Bitcoin is really volatile. So sometimes these things happen without a specific reason. But the most common reason that I've heard people addressing for Bitcoin is that China's recent crackdown on Bitcoin. So for those of you who don't know, China has banned crypto transactions and they have also banned institutions from working with cryptocurrencies as early as 2013. So they've also banned peer-to-peer, people from transacting with it as well. And recently they've also cracked down on Bitcoin mining. And if this sounds familiar, again, as I said, they've been doing this since 2013, okay? So, in fact, if you don't believe me, I found this Reddit post where somebody made a collage of all the news headlines of all the major bans that China has put in place for Bitcoin, and again, sure enough, the earliest one is from 2013. With everything else like Google or Facebook and everything else that's banned in China, they only have to ban it once, okay? But with Bitcoin, I don't know why, but the Chinese government feels the need to re-ban it every 3 years, which I think just goes to show the resilience of Bitcoin, because it won't go away, right? People still have a demand for it, and people still want to use it, and they have to reiterate, oh, by the way, it's still banned, right? They don't come out and say, oh, by the way, Facebook is still banned, in case you didn't know, right? They don't do that, but then they do that with Bitcoin. Anyways, that's besides the point. So this may lead to a crash in Bitcoin because, again, this goes to show that Bitcoin is facing more obstacles overseas, right, or internationally. So this is kind of bad for Bitcoin adoption, certainly, because China's not a happy camper, right? They're not on board with adopting crypto, or especially not Bitcoin. So I think that with some countries support it, some countries don't support it, and China, being an economic powerhouse, is a super powerful country that is against Bitcoin. So that's why Bitcoin prices dropped when this news came out. But you know what? I think that in the long term, this could actually be a good thing for Bitcoin, because a big concern right now is China's control over the Bitcoin network, because if you didn't know, over 50% of the hashing power comes from China. And if you don't know what hashing power is, it's basically all the computing power that's being put into the network. So you want like as much computing power as possible because it makes a network more secure, right? So over 50% of all the hashing power, of all the computing power that's being put into Bitcoin is coming from China right now. Well, guess what? If China's not allowing Bitcoin mining anymore, that's not going to be the case anymore. And miners are already packing up and leaving for other places because if you think about it, if you're a miner, you've spent thousands or sometimes millions of dollars on like equipment, then you're not just gonna like toss out all this equipment if you had the choice, right? If you could back up and leave, then you would leave to other countries. So a lot of these miners are actually moving to places like the United States, Europe, or surprisingly, for some reason, Kazakhstan, which I didn't expect, but okay. And that's going to decrease China's influence over Bitcoin over the long term, which I think that most people would agree that that is a good thing. Because you don't want like an authoritarian government in charge of Bitcoin, which is supposed to be like a people's currency or people's like digital asset of choice, right? So a lot of people were also afraid that China was going to one day do some coordinated 51% attack on Bitcoin if they control more than 50% of the hash power. Personally, I think that risk was minimal to begin with, but now that's even less of a concern, seeing as China's voluntarily giving up the ability to even have the potential to do that. So in the short term, I think that yes, it could be seen as bad for Bitcoin, which is why the price is dropping, but in the long term, I actually see this as a win. This also ties into the topic surrounding Bitcoin's energy use. So famous investor Kevin O'Leary has stated that he will not buy any Bitcoin that was mined in China because he can't be sure that they're using renewable energy, that they're using clean energy. Although some people have said that there's a political reason to his statements as well because he doesn't want to be seen as potentially being supportive of the Chinese government in any way. But regardless of the reason, whether it be political or if he's just virtue signaling or whatever, he is probably facing a lot of scrutiny from his compliance departments and regulators who would push back against like American or European countries or companies, sorry, not countries, American or European companies who want to hold Bitcoin that are mined in China. So that's another thing that will become less of a problem as time goes on with this news of China pushing out all these Bitcoin miners. And if we're going to talk about countries banning Bitcoin, well, there are also countries that are supportive of Bitcoin. So I'm sure you've heard by now that El Salvador has made Bitcoin legal tender and is the first country in the world to do so. And sure, El Salvador is no economic powerhouse like China, but I don't think that this will stop at El Salvador. That's my point. So Bitcoin provides a very unique benefit to countries with smaller economies that are determined or that are dependent on other countries. For example, I'm not sure if you knew this, but prior to making Bitcoin legal tender, El Salvador exclusively relied on the US dollar, as in they didn't have their own currency at all. They just transacted in US dollars. So if you're El Salvadorian, then you're subject to US monetary policy and you have no say in like how much money the US decides to print, for example, right? So switching to Bitcoin can be a way for smaller and weaker economies to escape being controlled by the US. So I think that this has massive appeal to like smaller economies, obviously, as Bitcoin is a provably scarce store of value that is outside of the control of any one entity. In fact, as we speak, I heard a rumor that Paraguay is already considering making Bitcoin legal tender as well, just like El Salvador did. So, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear more on this very soon. So what I'm saying is that crypto adoption is still going up overall. And for every piece of news that we hear about some country banning Bitcoin or some country trying to regulate it out of existence, there's more countries trying to adopt it and trying to like use it more. So I think that, it's a mixed bag. You're always going to have some countries that are going to be against it, some countries that are going to be for it. But I think as time goes on, the side that's adopting it will win out because it'll trigger like a domino effect as more countries start adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. Right, so that's that. Now, the next bit of news is a little bit more concerning than China banning Bitcoin, and I think that this is actually something that we should pay attention to. And this is like a pretty important piece of FUD. FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So this is the FUD surrounding Tether. So if you don't know what Tether is the world's biggest stablecoin, or US dollar stablecoin. I don't know if it's the world's biggest stablecoin, but I think it is, right? So the world's biggest US dollar stablecoin at the very least. So it is pegged 1-to-1 with the US dollar. So basically it's like the cryptocurrency version of a dollar that is used to facilitate crypto trades and anything blockchain related. You don't want your blockchain trades to have to be like reliant on traditional finance methods, right? You don't want to have to wait 3 days for a wire transfer every time you want to buy or sell crypto. Tether provides like a really simple way for you to transact on the blockchain, or in the crypto world. Now the problem is that, CoffeeZilla made a video surrounding Tether, and I highly recommend you go watch it if you have the time. But just to briefly explain, the FUD comes from the fact that it's been revealed that allegedly Tether does not have 1-to-1 backing with the US dollar. So it's not backed 1-to-1 with real cash. Or they originally claimed. So they actually originally claimed that they were backed 1-to-1, but it turns out that they weren't. And a lot of the things that are backing it include things like commercial papers, which are kind of like financial securities and cash equivalents. Or other cryptos even. So this is actually scaring a lot of people because this introduces the risk of a bank run. So a bank run, if you don't know, is when everyone tries to withdraw all their money at once. So theoretically, how it should work is that Tether should be backed 1-to-1, right? So you give me $1, let's say I'm Tether, you give me $1 and I give you a Tether token. And then if you wanted to at any time, then you can take the Tether and give it back to me and I'll give you back a US dollar. And granted, if I haven't spent the US dollar, if I actually do what I'm supposed to do and keep it in a vault somewhere, then we won't have any problems. But the problem arises if I lend you, if you lend me the dollar and I give you the Tether, and then I take the dollar and I do something else with it, right? Or I just give you a Tether without actually having a dollar backing it. And at that point, if you wanted to withdraw your dollar, then I wouldn't have enough money to give you if everybody wanted to redeem their Tether at once, right? So that's exactly what happens before in the fractional reserve system in the traditional finance system. But that risk has arguably been eliminated because banks these days are government backed. So if we had a bank run on an actual bank, then the government would step in and insure everyone. There's also insurance, right? So the government would take care of it if there was a bank run. But no such luck in the crypto world, right? So if Tether collapses, then unfortunately you're SOL. And I'll let you figure out what SOL stands for. And you can see how this will be a problem, right? So a lot of trades on the crypto market is actually done using Tether because, as I said, they're the biggest US dollar stablecoin. So a lot of Bitcoin is actually bought using Tether. So if everyone tries to withdraw all their money at once from Tether and it causes Tether to collapse, then you're going to have a real liquidity crisis in the crypto market, which would inevitably crash the entire crypto market really hard. This is definitely a legitimate cause for concern, and this is definitely something you want to keep at the back of your head. But I'd like to say a couple things about this and just provide some of my opinion, okay? So first, while I'm not a big fan of fractional reserve banking, for the most part, it works, right? Until it doesn't, but for the most part, it works. The fact is that most people don't need to withdraw all their cash at once, and they're fine with leaving it in the bank account. So if Tether were to collapse, it would need some huge catalyst, in my opinion, to make it happen. And if it didn't crash in the great market collapse in March 2020, then I would expect the catalyst to cause it to collapse would have to be a bigger catalyst than that. And second of all, I'm already seeing the sentiment of people in the crypto community shifting away from Tether and going towards something like USDC or USD coin, which is another stable coin that is considered to be a lot more trustworthy. So a lot of people are already encouraging other people to not use Tether and back out of Tether. So there is a potential scenario where this could go away quietly if just the market sentiment slowly shifts away from Tether such that it's not a big enough shift to cause it to collapse, but eventually, naturally USDC overtakes Tether, and then Tether just kind of starts to fade away. Wow, that was hard to say. But yeah, I mean, there could be a scenario like that where Tether just slowly starts to fade away. So that's the second point. And number three, let's assume that Tether does collapse. Okay, sure. I would agree that this would be an absolute disaster for the crypto community, right? So it would cause probably 80-90% drops, let's say. But would it actually kill crypto like forever? Would it go to zero, right? Would every single crypto go to zero? And I think that the answer is no. So it's like that moment when you let your crazy friend drive and afterwards you're like, holy crap, that was a bad idea. I'm never doing that again. And your friend turns to you and is like, but did you die, right? It's gonna be like that. I'm kidding. But in all seriousness, yes, you can expect to see a lot of pain for crypto, but I don't think that even if Tether collapses, it would kill Bitcoin. And Ethereum also, like, imagine how many use cases there will be for Ethereum in the future, and look at how many use cases there are for Ethereum now. Do you think that Ethereum is just going to go away if Tether collapses? So an analogy would be like the 1929 stock crash, right? Yes, it was painful. Yes, it took a really long time to recover, but it didn't permanently destroy the entire stock market, and it didn't kill every single company in the stock market that was trading on it before the crash. So crypto as a category is not going anywhere, in my opinion, because it's just technology at the end of the day. So crypto will not die for the same reason that we won't switch back to horse and buggy from driving our cars. So are there problems with cars? Yes, there are problems with cars. Maybe they pollute and you have a higher chance of dying if you get into a crash because you're going at higher speeds. But we're not switching back to horse and buggy even despite those reasons. So I was watching the Charles Hoskinson interview with Lex Friedman, who is a researcher at MIT. And Charles Hoskinson, if you don't know, he's the founder of Cardano, and he's also one of the original co-founders of Ethereum. One of the things that Charles said in the interview that I thought was really interesting was that what's unique about crypto is that you can have the smartest people from every part of the world working to make it better. Meaning that you don't have to be employed by a certain company, you don't have to apply for a work visa. If you're talented enough and you want to contribute, then you can contribute, and anyone with internet access can contribute. And I think that this is tremendously powerful. So my point is that I just want you to think long term, okay? So I know it's hard to do traditional fundamental analysis on Bitcoin or crypto in general because it doesn't have business operations, it doesn't have cash flow. But if you're willing to broaden your definition of fundamental analysis a bit, I'll provide some fundamental questions surrounding Bitcoin that you can answer by yourself. And I'm just going to use Bitcoin as an example, but you can do this with like pretty much any crypto. And you can determine for yourself whether or not you like to buy, hold, or sell. Question one is institutional interest and adoption of Bitcoin going up or going down? Question 2 is retail interest and adoption going up or going down? Question 3, are the amount of countries adopting Bitcoin going up or going down? Question 4, is there a scenario where you can see Bitcoin going to zero? If so, how? Question 5, what assets do you think will retain its value better over the next decade? Bitcoin, gold, dollars, or some other asset class like stocks, real estate, or bonds? So I think that you guys already know what my answers to those questions are, and would like to encourage you to really think about those questions. And if you don't mind, leave your answers to those questions down below in the comments. And even if you disagree with me, you don't have to agree with me once again. Even if you disagree with me, I love to hear what you say, right? I'm always open to constructive criticism and constructive feedback. So if you think that I'm an idiot and crypto is for idiots, let me know, right? Make a sound argument, but please be polite about this and please be civil. If you try to make a sound argument about this, I can definitely, my mind is open and I can definitely take in new information. So let me know down in the comments below what your opinion is on this whole crypto thing or this whole crypto crash in general, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna leave the video here for now. Be sure to give it a like if you enjoyed the video and consider subscribing if you like the series. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, links down below in the description as always. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.